Dr. Onikepe Ijete. I'm a specialty doctor in forensic psychiatry, and I work in a low-secure rehabilitation unit at the North London Forensic Service. I have a chronic illness which I've had for most of my life. It started when I was in secondary school, and it's one that's affected the joints in my body and caused damage and deformity. It's a painful condition. It's progressive, and over time it's caused disability. It doesn't have a cure and can only be managed with medication. Well, because I've had it for most of my life, it's been a part of me. So I didn't always have a disability, and as the illness progressed, then I found I had to rely on other people for help with simple activities of daily living. It has been difficult, especially there's a lot of disability stigma, and I mean it's the same me. I'm a medical doctor, but most people when they see me, because I need help with activities of daily living, significant help, and I also am a wheelchair user. So when people see me, they assume that I'm unemployed and that I'm on benefits. Some people look at me with pity. I've had people come to me at events and lay hands on me because they're praying for me, because maybe they think that I'm possessed with evil spirits or demons, and they're praying for this to come out of me. So it can be difficult, especially when in reality this is not the case. I'm a doctor. I work full time. I, as a single parent, raised a daughter who's now a medical doctor. Together, we set up a group called Inception, where we mentor students who want to become doctors, and also medical students and doctors on their journey through medicine. In 2019, the students were invited to number 10 Downing Street for a roundtable discussion with the special advisor to the Prime Minister at the time. They had a discussion about ways to improve the number of doctors from a BME background in the NHS so that they can help with health inequalities. I've been nominated for an NHS award. I've been at work. I mean, I'm part of an award-winning team. I'm a valued member of the team, and I'm a public speaker. And the list goes on. So to be reduced to, someone to be pitied, someone, who's unemployed, it can be painful at times. The good thing, though, is that sometimes when I meet people and they assume that I'm unemployed, it gives me a buzz, because they treat me with pity, and then they find out that I'm employed, I work full time, and I work in a significant role, and it gives me some joy to see how their faces change, the shock that they get, It was daunting. It was, I've never experienced, both patients and staff were worried about contracting the illness, and it was like fighting an invisible army. You didn't know who would be hit next or where. We were all very worried. We had to wear PPE, we had to get used to that, we had to get used to a new way of working. We had to work remotely, use Microsoft Teams, instead of being able to meet together in a room for ward rounds. So that was difficult. It was also difficult to lose work colleagues and friends and family. I mean, there was a time I lost a personal friend. I was just crying. I was working and I was crying, and you never knew who was going to be hit next. So it was difficult. But because I was frontline staff, so I came into work every day, and interestingly enough, it was quite easy for me to adjust to lockdown because my life was on lockdown before COVID-19 anyway. I don't have access to a lot of places, so my life is like work, home, and back to work again. So it was very easy for me to adapt to that. The other thing was that suddenly I had access to a lot of places that I hadn't been able to access before, because everything was now done online, so I could go to Scotland, I could go to I could go anywhere I wanted, because suddenly the whole world had come to my way of doing things. So that was great. I think people often perceive disabilities as a burden, and I wish they would understand that it could be a strength. Before I became disabled, I never thought about disability being a strength, but now I mean, for instance, because I have a disability and an illness, so I'm a doctor, I'm a patient as well. So I'm able to see what it's like to be at the receiving end of care. And it's influenced my practice and made it better. So when I'm dealing with patients, I'm able to bring that experience into my work with them, and it's made a huge difference to their experience. I have to overcome a lot of challenges, barriers on a day-to-day basis, and it's developed my creativity. I've learned to think outside the box, and I bring that to the team, and there's sometimes when I can see things differently. I've experienced stigma, continue to experience stigma on a day-to-day basis. A lot of our patients in psychiatry experience stigma on a day-to-day basis, so I can relate to them when that's happening, and I am able to advocate for them. A lot of people assume that people with disabilities don't want to work, but the converse is the case. People do want to work, people do want to stay in work, and if we were able to provide reasonable adjustments in a timely manner, when someone needs reasonable adjustments, it is provided, but sometimes it takes a long time, and it can be a period of uncertainty for the disabled person. It can be a very stressful and anxiety-provoking situation where people are wondering whether they'll be able to stay in employment or not. If we were able to achieve that, it would be great. And I don't see why it can't be achieved. I work in a secure forensic unit, and with reasonable adjustment, I've been able to carry on with work and also to achieve quite a lot. People sometimes think that the reasonable adjustment will be costly as well, but it's not always the case. Science has moved on. For instance, I have an e-move chair, being a wheelchair user. So this chair, it's adjustable, so it can be raised or lowered, and depending on the surface that I'm working on. In the past, someone working from a wheelchair would have had to have all the tables lowered to that wheelchair. But now, what I do is to raise the chair depending on how low or how high the surface is. I have a wheelchair accessible vehicle which I drive to work, and once upon a time that wasn't present, but with that chair it's given me a degree of autonomy and independence, so I'm able to get myself to work. I think that I would like them to involve the people with disabilities in providing the reasonable adjustment, in working out the solution, because sometimes it can be difficult for people who are able-bodied to understand the challenges that people with disabilities are going through. So I'll give you an example, disabled toilets. Sometimes, I get to, sometimes the handrails are not placed where they should be, and it's easy to see that whoever placed that handrail there, they don't have a disability, because if they did, they would know exactly where to put it. People should see disability as a strength and not as a burden.
So I think that it's affected my view of disability a lot. It's made me understand a lot more about what it's like to have a disability and how it can affect someone's life. I've also seen the stigma as well that comes along with having a disability, and how challenging that can be for someone. But I think it's had some really positive effects as well, because I understand a bit more about what it's like to live with a disability. That's something that I can also take to my workplace too, and it affects my interactions with patients in a positive way, I feel. So I would say the main thing that I think people should understand is just not to make assumptions about people with disabilities. I think people tend to sometimes feel because someone with a disability, they need support to do something, or they can't do everything by themselves, that it's easier to make decisions for them. When you do something like that, you take away the decision from the person. And that's also a part of disability stigma as well. So if they just treat them how they would treat anyone else, and allow them to make their own choices and decisions.
With autonomy?
Yes, basically, yeah. I think that would be the most helpful. She has a lot. I've seen how passionate she is about her job and her work, and she's always had good things to say about what she does. So I think I went into medical school already having really positive ideas about psychiatry. And then when I did my placement in medical school and I did my first job as an F1 in psychiatry as well, I just really enjoyed it. So for me, it's definitely the specialty that I want to go into. Yeah.
Ellie wrote an essay. She entered a national medical student essay competition, which she wrote on disability stigma, and she won because she used examples from my personal experience.
Yeah, it was just about the barriers it can create to accessing rehabilitation services, and what we can do as doctors and as a society as well to address disability stigma, because it is really important.